Hello, I'm Jon Delano, KDKA-TV political editor. Thanks for joining us for Inside Pennsylvania Politics. We're bringing you weekly political discussions in the run-up to Pennsylvania's primary election on April 23rd. We have assembled a panel of young politically active Pennsylvanians from diverse backgrounds and opinions to gauge what they think of the issues confronting the Commonwealth and the country. Elections are about the future, so who better to talk about that than the young? So when we designed this show, I said, let me be the only old guy on the panel. That's exactly what we are doing. Joining us on our left side of our panel, Connor Hayes, Northside attorney, Democrat, and member of the LGBTQ Rights Committee of Allegheny County Bar Association, and Delancey Walton, senior at Duquesne University, a Democrat, and president of the Duquesne University chapter of the NAACP. To the right, Dave Gehring, Banksville resident, veteran, and member of the Allegheny County Young Republicans, and Isabella Russo, Oakmont resident, and a member of the Allegheny County Council of Republican Women. So, Pennsylvania's mail-in ballot battle could be going to the Supreme Court. The Third Circuit District Court of Appeals said last week, mail-in ballots that are not correctly dated by the voter on the outside of the envelope should not be counted, even if they arrive at the county election office on time. Earlier, a lower court had ruled ballots with missing or incorrect dates should still be counted because the date wasn't part of determining whether a voter's ballot was eligible or not. Judge Thomas Ambrose wrote the Third Circuit's decision. He says the rule at issue governs how a qualified voter must cast the ballot for it to be counted. And, quote, the date requirement, it turns out, serves little apparent purpose, but the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ruled that dating the envelope is mandatory and undated or misdated ballots are invalid under its state law and must be set aside, unquote. At the same time, some Republicans nationally are trying to encourage their voters to use mail-in ballots, while some Republican legislators in Pennsylvania are saying we need to do away with no excuse absentee voting altogether. So let's start with our panel question first. Do young people use mail-in voting in Pennsylvania? Delancey, let's start with you.
Yes, we do actually. So being on a college campus, I have the opportunity to do registration for voting. And one of the biggest things they do talk about on my campus is that they're far away from home, so they have to use mail-in ballots to vote. And I was just discussing with my friends recently about the importance of mail-in voting and how it kind of impacted them and allowed them to use their voice to actually vote and make a change while they're being gone at school. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, I can certainly understand it for college students, for universities like at Duquesne, and you are our youngest panelist and a senior at Duquesne, so thank you. Isabella, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of going piggyback off of Delancey's saying what she was saying, I definitely think it should be available for mail-in ballots. Like college students, I graduated college last year actually from Kent State, and it's a great resource for people, young people, to get out and vote, and then also for the elderly. A lot of them, can't drive anymore. This is a great way for them to also vote as well, because their vote is just as important as young people's votes as well.
We now have leaders in both parties encouraging mail-in voting, if at all possible. Yep. So let's move to the legal question, because we do have a lawyer on this panel. Connor, let me just ask you about the Third Circuit's decision, which basically says, the judge said there's no reason for this, but it is the state law, and so it should be enforced. Should voters who vote by mail be required to date the outside envelope of their ballot, even if it gets in on time?
I would say no. I think there's kind of two prongs to how I feel about the Third Circuit's decision. One is that I think it's just legal error. So the Third Circuit basically decided these questions 2 years ago in a case called Migliori, and the Supreme Court vacated that for procedural reasons that we don't need to get into here. But I think the Third Circuit already said this shouldn't be applied under these provisions of the Civil Rights Act. So I think the Third Circuit's recent opinion was wrong. So I think there's that prong of it. But on the other hand, on the policy side, I think to the point that was just made about the elderly need, mail-in voting half the time. When you look at these cases and you look at some of the facts underneath them, a lot of the people whose ballots were being thrown out for not dating them were the elderly who maybe forgot to put the date. And when it comes in, these county boards of elections are date stamping the ballot anyway. So, why do we need to have a date signed on the ballot when they know what date it was?
But it is the law. The legislature approved this. The governor signed off on it. The Supreme Court says it's the law. Dave, how do you feel about dating the ballots, these absentee or mail-in ballots?
Early voting, you mean? So with early voting, one thing that's been a problem since 2020, and this has gone up to the state Supreme Court, is just how many security measures we have on that ballot. And one big thing, it should be across the board, but one big thing I know on the Republican Party, I speak to friends of mine that are Republicans, Independents, and Democrats actually, and everyone wants to feel like they know their vote's counting. And as everyone here has said, younger people, older people, more people are taking advantage of the early voting as it's becoming, more prevalent over time, because we've only had it for a few years. Yeah. So I think as long as we have more security issues that will increase confidence, if there was, say, a recount, you want to have those security issues so we can get more people to vote and have more votes.
It doesn't concern you whether the date on the ballot is correct or not if somebody puts in their birth date instead of their...
Oh, no, I think, you have to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted.
Okay. Good. Well, last fall, the Department of State announced a redesign to the outer envelopes of mail-in ballots that will at least try to mitigate some of these problems that voters make a date mistake. A common issue was voters filling in their birthday on the date line. Now, with the redesign, in Pennsylvania at least, filling in the first two numbers of the years as 20, only younger voters could make that mistake. So we're basically taking away the possibility of anyone born in the 1900s making that mistake. Do you think this is going to help address some of the problems? What do you think, Connor?
I hope so. I think, that was constantly an issue. My hope is that will fix some of the issues, but again, I think some of the issue was also just people forgetting to put the date, and that won't necessarily solve that problem.
Yeah. But again, we've had thousands of ballots that have been disqualified because of the mail-in date requirement, and that is the rule. So folks listening, you gotta date. You gotta date that outer envelope or your ballot won't count. So, well, let's move on. Women make up just over half of the Commonwealth at 50.6%, according to the 2023 census estimates. But women are just 26% of our congressional delegation, 32% of our General Assembly, 23% of mayors, 42% of school board members, and 33% of judgeships. There's never been a woman governor or U.S. senator from Pennsylvania. What does having women representing Pennsylvania bring to our politics? What's missing when women are missing? And what are some of the barriers preventing women from running? And let me just start with a basic question. I'm going to turn to the women first, and that is, are we better today than we have been when it comes to women in politics? What do you think, Isabella?
I think we definitely are, and I see a bright future, I think, for women as well. Is it the number that I want it to be with the percentage of women in politics? Not right now, but I see more and more mothers getting involved. I see, it's not even just politics aside, there's a lot of women that just want to get involved politically. So me being myself, I just got involved. DeLacy's getting involved out in Duquesne, and we see what's going on in our country, and we really want to take a stance on that. So yeah, I see a very bright future for women in politics in general.
Delancey, what do you think? Are there more women involved now than ever, or are we still quite short?
I think there is more women involved now than ever. I think we progressed a lot when it comes to years ago, but I also think there's a lot more work to be done when it comes to involving women in politics. And when I was 18, I got the opportunity to run for office. So that was me being a representation.
You ran for school board in the city of Pittsburgh, and that was pretty phenomenal for a young person at 18 to run for school board.
Yeah, thank you. So in that moment, not only was I young, but I was also a woman, being able to run and show other young individuals that you can do this, especially for our girls, because it's important that we as women are getting involved in politics so that we can present our issues and the things we worry about in our own community, in our own gender. So I believe in the near future, it'll get where we want to go.
Which is what, 50-50?
50-50, 50-50, one more. But I do think there's a lot of work we need to do when it's involving women in politics.
I'll tell a quick story. My mother was the first woman in her party elected to the township commission in our hometown. And she had a rule that if you didn't know anybody on the ballot, regardless of party, you always voted for the woman. Now, that is probably not a smart way to pick your candidates. But on the other hand, because her view was there were no women in government when she was running, and she figured a Republican or a Democratic woman, it didn't matter, it was better to have just a woman. So let me ask the men this question, and it's maybe a little unfair, but sort of do a little projection here. What do you think are the barriers? Why is it that women don't hold 50% at least of the offices in Pennsylvania?
I mean, I think that there's an obvious answer to grasp at, which is just some people aren't comfortable with a woman taking office. I mean, we see this in statistics over and over again. Speaking from, someone who's part of the LGBT community, I see in polls, a substantial number of Americans aren't comfortable with maybe a gay president or a gay senator. So I think there's maybe that piece of it. I also think that, I think there's a lot of people who are checked out of our political system because they don't see themselves in it. So maybe people who might want to support a woman for office, they aren't voting because they don't see enough women as is.
Right.
And maybe they just check out. And then, that bulk of support that, candidates could get just isn't there.
What do you think, Dave?
I don't necessarily check numbers, so to speak. I look for qualifications.
Right.
I don't care if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're black or you're white. I just want someone that's qualified, honestly. I've knocked doors for a ton of women. We have a lot of women locally, like you said, okay, president, governor. We have a lot of really, really phenomenal women that have run and that have won locally. And I love seeing more people, as they've said over there, getting involved. I think it might have something to do with just, as far as a society, women have been kind of taking care of the household, and we're kind of morphing out of that in society. So men have been the breadwinners much longer than women have.
Right.
So we're just in a in a segue at this point. I expect to see a lot more women in politics.
Yeah,
They do great.
I think there's economics involved. I think you're right in many ways, although now that women are in the workforce in really full ways, it's maybe we'll see that change coming. And we'll see Delancey elected to something.
That's right.
She runs for school board in another 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know.
Love seeing young people run.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to wrap up this discussion there. And let me say, coming up on Inside PA Politics, the race for Attorney General is the most crowded primary contest in the state. We're hearing from each candidate in their own words coming up next. Stick with us. The most contested statewide race on the ballot this primary is the one for Attorney General. I had the opportunity to speak to all 7 candidates. Here they are in their own words, starting with the 2 Republicans, followed by the 5 Democrats.
I have fought against gangs as a special assistant United States attorney. I have fought against drug traffickers from all spectrums of the process. I'm a longtime trial litigator, so I have been one of our top homicide jury trial prosecutors.
At the end of the day, we are going to be having a debate about violent crime and which of the 7 of us is most capable of being hard as nails, tough, combat proven, and ready to take the fight to take our streets back. And that's me.
When it comes to gun violence, I understand exactly how people acquire their guns. And I know exactly who to look for in terms of going after people that have allowed this to become an epidemic, meaning that guns have become very accessible and out of control, where we really can't control who gets them in their hands. I want to be able to use my expertise and my understanding to go after illegal sales and illegal distribution, ghost guns.
In that role as Auditor General, I have a record of protecting Pennsylvanians. It was my investigation found over 3,000 untested rape kits. Working with my team, we cleared that backlog and we brought justice to victims. It was my investigation found 58,000 unanswered phone calls to the child abuse hotline. any single one of those calls could have been life or death for a child. So I've had the ability to conduct tough investigations all over the state.
The work that I did in Bucks County as the county solicitor who protected the right to abortion when that came before the U.S. Supreme Court, who enforced our constitutional right to a clean environment as the first county solicitor to ever do that. And when it came to protecting the right to vote, when that came under attack in 2020 by Donald Trump and his campaign.
When you look at the work I've done in the legislature, taking on the largest special interests that I've done throughout Philadelphia and throughout the Commonwealth, taking on those political power brokers and elites who don't care about us here in Pennsylvania, but are more concerned with padding their own pocket. I've done that work.
I've built a partnership between the police and the community. And over the last 4 years, we've reduced the number of shootings by 72%, and the number of gun homicides are down by 68%. People who live in Chester now don't always look like me, but they're getting to live the American dream my family got to live because of the wonderful community that Chester is. I want to do that for every community in Pennsylvania.
Now, the race for Attorney General isn't only interesting because it's so contentious. 2 of our last 3 governors in Pennsylvania have been former AGs. So the position may be seen as a proving ground to take the top office in the Commonwealth. Coming up on Inside PA Politics, we'll hear from our panelists on what they think the biggest issues are ahead for the next Attorney General. Stick with us. Welcome back to Inside PA Politics. I'm Jon Delano. 5 Democrats are running for Attorney General and 2 Republicans. Is the office just a stepping stone to governor, or are candidates looking to do big things? Some major issues that have confronted current and past attorneys general: the opioid lawsuit resulting in $1 billion for the state over 18 years, the grand jury investigation into child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, and election lawsuits following the 2020 presidential election. Let's open up the floor to our panelists. And I guess I should start with the very basic question. Do any of you know all these candidates? Have you heard from any of them? Let me start with you. How about you, Delancey?
No, I haven't really heard from any of them. I do get the text messages they send out, and I get to like read them or maybe click or like they ask to volunteer and stuff like that, but I have not met any of them.
Yeah. Have you met any of them, Isabel?
I have had the opportunity to meet Dave Sunday. He's running as a Republican. He's a great guy. He, I think, can bring a lot to the table, and he also has the GOP state party endorsement as well.
Yes,
along
he does.
with many others.
Yes, he does. And interestingly, his opponent, who is Craig Williams, a state representative from Delaware, Chester counties, he says the problem with Dave Sunday is that he hasn't been a Republican his whole life. He was a Democrat until age 37, and he, Craig Williams, says, you should vote for me because I am the true blue Republican, maybe it's true red Republican. What do you think of that argument, Dave?
No way. We are a very welcoming party. We have many people in our party that have been Democrats before, many people that have run that have been Democrats. I like to say they took the red pill. Maybe they saw the light, but we welcome everybody. Common sense. You know, Dave Sunday is a great guy, and he is also fully endorsed by the city committee for Pittsburgh.
So on the Democratic side, I think what's interesting to me, of the 5 candidates, 4 are from Philadelphia or suburban Philadelphia. Eugene DePasquale, whose grandfather was Jeep DePasquale, some of us of my vintage, and I know that's none of you, remember his grandfather as president of city council. Does that make a difference in an election like this? What do you think, Connor?
I mean, I think it can. I think in races that I've paid close attention to in the past, where there's a large, wide open primary and many of the candidates are splitting one half of the state's vote, you know, you might see many people in Western PA voting for the Western PA candidate. And if there's only one, that might push them over.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's only one woman. Of all 7 candidates, there's only one woman, Kiera Bradford Gray, who was the public defender in both Philadelphia and Montgomery County. What do you think, Delancey? Do you think people will go in voting for the woman, not knowing any of these people?
I do think so. And I think so because, as we talked about before, there's that change in that progression when it comes to women being involved in politics, whether it's law or legality. I think people will go in looking to see what she's bringing to the table and maybe take that and say, you know what, I want to vote for this woman because, one, she's a woman and it's progression in our state, and also because they may like what she's presenting to the table as an attorney general.
Yeah. I had some people say to me that it's hard to know that she is a woman because of the name Keir is not automatically identified as a female name. I thought that was kind of an interesting analysis. So we'll see what's going to happen. Hey, thank you folks for this discussion. When we come back, we'll get some final thoughts from our panel. Stick with us. As we come to the end of the show, one last topic. Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Guy Reschenthaler made national news this week when he introduced a bill to rename Dulles International Airport in Washington to the Donald J. Trump International Airport. Usually we name airports after deceased politicians like John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, not candidates for public office. So I wanted to ask our panel, what do you think of this? We only have a few seconds. Connor?
Look, we've got a lot of polarizing things going on right now. I don't think we need to do something like polarizing a national airport.
Delancey?
I don't think it's actually necessary, but it would be nice to see. I don't think we really should name it after Donald Trump, but I mean, if it happens,
it happens.
It happens.
Yeah. What do you think, Isabella? I have to admit, I thought this was an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, you know, us too. But at the end of the day, if he wins another 4 years and does incredible things, I'm open to it. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Dave?
Look, I like Trump. Couldn't care less, honestly. Couldn't care less. No.
Well, maybe that's the right answer. Thanks for watching. You can catch this stream every Thursday and Friday at 11 a.m. through the primary election at KDKA.com. And we're also airing on KDKA Plus on Sundays at 12:30 p.m. Hey, thanks to our panelists. Thanks again to you for watching. If you have a suggestion, let me know at jdelano@kdka.com. Remember, our government is only as good as you make it. Have a great day.